Welcome to the Big Blue Seat Show, and as you see right now, well, folks, we're stuck in something real, the nuclear war has just begun.
Nuclear weapons have been around since the end of the Second World War, when they were first deployed in use, and as I like to say, that was one of the most important days in human history. Because on that day, when the atom bombs were dropped, we basically discovered the weapon that was going to shape the future of, basically, the world. If not for the atom bomb, we wouldn't have the Cold War, which put on brink our ability to discuss things and to discuss politics between big nations, and also almost put an end to humanity with things like the Cuban Missile Crisis. But all of these things are topics for an external and a longer discussion another day. But what I want to talk about is the nuclear weapons themselves, because even though it's been years since we last used them, it's pretty much a big deal today to hear about nuclear weapons, and here is why. Basically, let's start with what the hell are those nuclear weapons and how do they work? Well, there are two basic types. The first one that was used was the fission bomb, and fission is basically the splitting of atoms, or just breaking away into smaller pieces, and it's basically less efficient than fusion, but that'll be covered in just a second. Fusion and fission happen, high temperatures and high amounts of radiation are released, and this is basically the main principle that is used to create and use nuclear weapons today. And basically since the very beginning, since they exist, since they release huge amounts of heat and they also release huge amounts of radiation, they can be used as a pretty deadly mean of, well, killing people and doing some more damage. Because when combined with the proper amount of isotope that's used in the nuclear weapon, and when dropped in the right place, such a weapon can create massive damage, as we've seen in the example of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So the first bomb was the fission bomb. So basically what happened is that the atoms split, and the first one, the little boy, was a gun-type fission weapon. What happens is an isotope of uranium is shot into a bunch of other isotopes of uranium, causing fission, shattering those atoms, and they release huge amounts of energy, and all of that happens at the right point when the barometric sensor detects a certain height, so it explodes at a certain place and basically creates the most damage in the way it was calculated. The other type that we have are fusion weapons. Those are the newer ones that we have today, so thermonuclear weapons, also referred to as H-bombs. And H-bombs are the things that we need to fear these days, because that's what's, as I said, around, and that's also something that is much more powerful. They can be up to 700 times more powerful these days than the things that we know from back in 1945. So fusion is way more effective than fission, so together creates more than separate. Pretty much logic. Now, but nuclear weapons, why should we fear them, and why have they not been used since 1945 again? Well, this is quite an interesting thing. When you look at the Cold War and you look at the big old guys from the Cold War, the American presidents and the leaders of the Soviet Union, you can think that they were pretty much on the brink of destroying their own nations with those bombs. And if you think that way, you are right, because they were. The Cuban Missile Crisis, for example, when the example of brinksmanship, so fighting until the edge without actually fighting or engaging in a war, is the best example of that. The Soviet deployment of those mid-range nuclear weapons in Cuba, and America's response, because of the fears that they're going to be attacked by the Soviets without having the ability to strike back, almost led to a nuclear war. But thanks to the discussions between the both sides, and thanks to Robert Kennedy and John F. Kennedy, this was avoided, and thankfully we're alive now, because if the war happened, chances are we would have had to wear these masks. And yeah, that's basically it for that. But also, why those weapons haven't been used? Well, during the Cold War, a policy was developed, and the policy explains it the best. And the policy has this nice, boring, historical name, Mutually Assured Destruction, and that is, for short, M.A.D. Since nuclear weapons are M.A.D, Mutually Assured Destruction, you don't want to use them. And the thing is that war, even though it seems as stupid as it can get, has some logic behind it. So when you engage in a war, you want to get something from attacking. So for example, you want to get territory. And since nuclear weapons are the opposite of that, because they provide destruction only, it seems as if they're useless, and M.A.D actually just exactly states that. So if one side attacks, the other side attacks as well, with a strike back or with the strike at the same time, and both sides are basically blown to pieces and mutually assured destruction. Both sides destroyed, no gains, war logic is gone. As ironic as war logic might sound, it actually does exist, and the thing is, if not that war logic and if not M.A.D, well, we could have been M.A.D because we would have to wear these. And that is because, well, nuclear fallouts. That's the last thing I want to cover when it comes to nuclear weapons for now. So, we've been saved from these masks which are terribly uncomfortable, made of rubber and, yeah, looking pretty much ugly and scary, just by the fact that we've never used those nuclear weapons. But it's not usually that the nuclear weapon itself kills the people immediately. It does, of course, destroy everything in its radius, it does kill the people within its radius, but then you've got something worse to worry about, and that's nuclear fallout. Nuclear fallout is basically all the things that escape into the atmosphere, all the radioactive particles, and they also come from, like, for example, nuclear power plant explosions, but that's a different topic again. But nevertheless, nuclear fallout requires you to protect yourself from all those radioactive particles into entering your body, because they emit gamma rays and beta rays and alpha rays, all those things that hurt you and also can cause many diseases, and those diseases are, yeah, deadly to humans, as we all surely know.
Yes, we've been saved from wearing these thanks to things like M.A.D, so mutually assured destruction, sorry for that breath, is why we don't have to use nuclear weapons because they provide no gain. Will we use them ever? Well, it's not up to me to decide that. Let's just hope we won't, because then the nuclear fallout comes and then we die, and then we all sound like terrible Kermit or something because our voices are distorted by the gas masks. So, nevertheless, thank you for watching. I hope that now we understand at least the basics of nuclear weapons. Again, bruh, nuclear weapons is one thing that we don't want, but now we know how they work, and we know their effects, and we know why they haven't been deployed during the Cold War. So thank you. Let's hope that 9045 doesn't come again. So hit that like button if you don't want me wearing this in the next episode. Subscribe and comment about what you think about this episode, this stupid gas mask. And also, maybe one day, if you want this, I can do a giveaway with that. Because I sure will be healthy without it. Peace out and cheers. I hope you enjoyed. Big Blue Seed again. Bye.